right, and welcome to the Detroit Lions News Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Chap. Obviously, today, if you weren't watching, the Lions beat the Browns 34-10. And when we were talking about this on the podcast before the game preview podcast, you know, I talked about how this might be a difficult matchup. When I talked about this might be a difficult matchup, I said, look, when you look at the Cleveland Browns, they are a good defensive team from every metric that you look at. And the Detroit Lions put 34 points on them. And not only did they put 34 points on them, but this was a statistic that Colton Pouncey put up. Very good statistic. Lions running back Jahmyr Gibbs had more rushing yards on Sunday, 91 than the Bengals, 46, Ravens 45, and the Packers 81, recorded as a team versus the Browns. So when you look at it like that, like I didn't want to overstate the record. Okay. When you go play the Cleveland Browns, we all know that their offense really isn't that great. And I told you in the game preview podcast that if they can get some turnovers from Joe Flacco, they're going to win this football game. Now, honestly, I didn't expect the Lions offense to have their C minus performance and still put up 34 points. That's surprising. But the Lions did just that. And if you look at the statistics, the team stats, I mean, the Browns had 65 plays, the Detroit Lions 56, 249 yards for the Browns, 277 yards for the Detroit Lions. The Lions had more yards per play at 4.9 compared to the Browns 3.8. When you look at passing yards, 170 for the Browns, 168 for the Detroit Lions. Rushing yards, 109 for the Detroit Lions, 79 for the Cleveland Browns. And you look at the first downs, obviously they are very 16-16. But you look at third down efficiency at 3 for 14 for the Browns, 6 for 14 for the Detroit Lions. They had an interception, but the Cleveland Browns had 3 turnovers on the day. And the penalties, they were even 6-6. I really don't care, but the time of possession did go in the favor of the Cleveland Browns. And look, I said on the podcast I expected a way closer game because the line coming into this game was 10, but then it changed to 9.5. Now, I don't care who you are or what you believe, but the Detroit Lions winning the way that they won against Cleveland Browns is impressive because this is not a team that you go, well, the Cleveland Browns are the Cleveland Browns, but the Cleveland Browns have one of the best defenses in the NFL. It's not just that they beat the Cleveland Browns because this was probably a C minus game from the Detroit Lions. If you want to be honest, I thought their routes were a little bit shaky at best. I thought that there were some times where they were off kiltered. And for the third straight week, the Detroit Lions offensive line has not given them a sack. That's 3 straight games for the Lions without allowing a sack. That's the first time they've done that in the same season in a franchise history. And then Will Birchfield added again, give some credit to Jared Goff, who's been nimble in the pocket when he's been needed to be. Now, this is where I go back to what I talk about on like the Monday shows when we're talking about the Pro Football Focus Mondays, because I love the statistic. I absolutely love the statistic of pass pressure turned into a sack. And usually Jared Goff is at the top of that list. And when you look at the top of that list, it's usually the best quarterbacks in the NFL. It usually is the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I really hold that metric in high regard because if you could avoid sacks while getting pressured, that's all you need to know about the quarterback that you have. Even if he's not as mobile as most other quarterbacks, he's not a Jalen Hurts, he's not a Josh Allen, he's not a Patrick Mahomes, a Lamar Jackson. When he's getting pressured, he doesn't get sacks. He doesn't get sacked as much as most. And going 3 games without a sack since the debacle in Green Bay, it gives a lot of credence into where this Detroit Lions offensive line is going. And it's a ton of credit into Hank Fraley. Because what Hank Fraley has been able to do with his offensive line, you have 2 interior guards, Christian Mahogany and Tate Ratledge, who are young players who are just learning their system. They're just learning how to play NFL football, and they're absolutely playing dynamite. And that's something that Hank Fraley has done over and over and over and over again, because you go back to like what I was talking about, it was a long time ago, but Coyote Oshika, right? He had to make a start against Ed Oliver of all people. Now, when you're making your first NFL start as an undrafted free agent, you usually get whooped. Coyote Oshiga did a damn good job in that game. And that was because Hank Fraley coached him up to where he needed to be. Because y- over the course of a year, you are going to lose offensive linemen. What you're seeing with Tate Radledge, what you're seeing with Christian Mahogany, you're seeing development and growth week after week after week. And that's the most important thing about this when we talk about the offensive line, because week 1 to week 4, completely different offensive lines. That week 1 offensive line was not the same offensive line that was in Baltimore last week. It was not the same offensive line that was in against Chicago and Cleveland. So it's going to get better. And I think that the way that the Lions have played so far in the season, today not playing their best offensive game. The defense came to play. They forced some turnovers. They held them to the Browns' offense is not good by any stretch of the imagination. They're not even good. But you got to give credit to some of the players like Hutch, like Tyleik Williams, like DJ Reader. Those guys were eating up the run game. And then you had to give guys like Anzalone, Derek Barnes, Jack Campbell, their flowers, DJ Reed, Brian Branch. Everyone had a good emphasis on where they were going to go. So very impressive win for the Lions, especially when you think about the leading tackler today was Jack Campbell with 11 total tackles. Derek Barnes had 7. Anzalone had 6. Terrion Arnold had 6. Brian Branch had 5. And you had 2 tackles for loss for Hutchinson, 1 for Brian Branch, 1 for Jack Campbell. You had 4 total tackles for loss total, and you had 10 passes defend, and you had 9 QB hits, and you had 1 touchdown. Now the 1 touchdown we all know was it wasn't a touchdown. I don't know why it says there was a touchdown, but that's probably special teams. But Cleve Raymond had a punt return touchdown. That was nice. Jake Bates was 4 for 4 on extra points and 2 for 2 on field goals in that 58-yarder. I mean, that was freaking beautiful, right down the center. I mean, that you just can't get any better than that. But when we talk about what the Detroit Lions have been able to do this season so far, you got to be very happy of where they're going to go. They scored 123 combined points since week 1 in Green Bay. So, everyone was sitting here and they were panicking. They were like, oh my God, what are we going to do? The Lions are struggling. They struggle against Green Bay. I don't read too much into 1 week. And we're at the quarter point of the season. We're going to see what the grades come out tomorrow and see where we are and see where some of these guys are in terms of the development. But I love where the Lions are right now. And they only got room to grow. They're only going to get better. It's week 4 of the season. Week 1 to week 4 is a huge jump. You're going to get a huge jump from week 4 to week 8, and then a huge jump from week 8 to week 12. That's what happened last year. Even though they had a ton of injuries, there was growth. There was growth going through a season. Even though the injuries are piling up, you still had players contributing at a high level. And you're just hoping that you don't have the same amount of injuries you had last year, because last year was a total debacle. Because you don't usually have 17 players on IR and you and get home field advantage throughout the playoffs. But I did think it was interesting. There were some things that Dan Campbell did say, but it's interesting when you think about it. He was saying Khalif Raymond, but it's very interesting. But this is what he said on. I want to put this up for you guys. This is what he said about Terrion Arnold and DJ Reed. I'm going to play this for you because this is a key part here.
I don't, we all saw Reed's, I don't know I don't know what that's going to be or how long. I mean, certainly I cannot imagine him playing next week at a minimum till we get more tests done. And I don't think TA is a major thing. Now, I don't know. There again, I don't know about him next week, but it's certainly not as significant as what, as what Reed had.
So you see right there, Coach Campbell is saying, like, he doesn't know what it's going to be or what it's going to do, what DJ Reed's going to, what kind of injury he has. I mean, you could see him potentially missing the Cincinnati game, which will be a big, huge loss. But especially when you go up against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, that's a pretty good sample size to go up against. But, this is just this is why you have a stacked secondary. I said stacked secondary because when you talk about the secondary that the Lions have, there's depth. Like I can realistically go through this season, have some injuries, and I'm okay. As long as they're not season enders, I think we can get through a 2 or 3 game stretch with Devontae Maddox and Rocky Sin. I just do. Terrion Arnold has been brutal, but let's be honest, he's got to chill out on the penalties. That's the number one game, the name of the game. Like his penalties are becoming a real problem. And if he doesn't get it fixed, I'm sure Kelvin Shepherd will have a spot for him on the bench because you can't consistently, cost the team yards and everything like that. It just doesn't work that way. So that's what I think about Terry and Arnold. But there's a lot of time from week 4 to week 8 to see if he can make a jump. But Amik Robertson taking his playing time. But with the DJ Reed injury, it's going to open up a huge opportunity for everyone on the defense that is in the cornerback room, like Khalil Dorsey. It's a chance for him to open up. And, you wish that Ennis Rakestraw was healthy. Unfortunately, he is not. But you have 2 of the best safeties in the NFL. As long as they stay healthy, you're going to be fine. You will be fine. Now, I did like what Mr. Dan Campbell said about the defense today. Set the tone of the day. And I'll play that for you right now.
Start with this. We said going into this game, our defense was going to really need to set the tone in special teams, and offensively, man, we'll be smart. We'll find our spots, and really, for the most part, that's the way the day went. I thought our defense set the tone for the day, man. Those 3 takeaways, Leaf on the punt return, and offensively, we were able to turn those 3 takeaways into 17 points, which was huge. Start with this. We said going into this game, our defense.
All right, so you heard Coach Campbell there. I don't know why it keeps going. You heard Coach Campbell there talk about the how the Lions defense set the tone of the day, and you could personally feel it. Obviously, when you're going up against an offense like the Cleveland Browns, who are not routinely a great football team on offense, we went through the statistics on Thursday on the game preview podcast. There were guys that could beat you. Their rookie tight end Fenton, he could beat you. Jerry Jeudy can beat you. Cedric Tillman can beat you. Quinshawn Junkins, their running back, can beat you, and he had one of his worst games today. And it's going to be interesting to see the statistics that come out because his 2 games that he's played they were fantastic. This game he played against the Lions, he wasn't that great. He had glimpses of times of where he could be great, but overall, Quinshawn Junkins wasn't the same player that he was the prior 2 weeks against Green Bay and against Baltimore. That's where he's at, Baltimore. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens there because the Lions defense absolutely played great. And I thought that the reason that the Detroit Lions won was because of how they played on defense. Even though their offense wasn't up to snuff, they still played well. And the defense really got them a lot of help. And Khalif Raymond taking that punt return back, that was a crucial play right there. If you take away that's a huge point in the game. So very happy about the way that the Lions won today's game. And like I said, when you go through the statistics, I mean, Jared Goff was 16 for 27, 168 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. His QBR was 45.8, which is probably one of the worst that he's had. But understand, across the field on offense, Joe Flacco had a 12.3 QBR, was sacked 3 times for 14 yards, had 2 interceptions, no touchdowns, 16 for 34. When you talk about having a bad day, it's pretty good to have a bad day when the other offense on the other side of the field is getting eliminated by your defense. So defense set the tone, like Coach said, and that's exactly what happened. Hutchinson, again, 2 sacks today. You could tell that he's starting to get back into fruition. Like, I know there's a lot of people that are sitting out there and they're going, where is this guy Hutch? Why can't he be like Myles Garrett? Why can't he be like Micah Parsons? And my rebuttal to that is if you thought coming into the season that he would just absolutely tear the cover off the pitch and absolutely be just dominant from the start after the traumatic injury that he had last year, where he broke his leg and snapped his leg in half, you're just not that smart of a person. Now, I'm not being facetious. I'm not being mean to you. I'm just saying psychologically, when you get a major injury, it's pretty hard to go back to the thing that you were doing and compete at a high level. So it takes some time. I don't care about training camp. I don't care about the joint practices, live fire and live games that actually matter. Like if he would have played in the preseason, what the hell does that matter? It does not matter. So people sitting here, and I saw the comments on the page, the Detroit Lions News podcast page on Facebook, and I sat here and I was like, there were some people that are saying, "Where's this guy Hutch? He ain't like Garrett. He ain't like such and such." Well, it's funny you should mention that because Garrett today had 0 sacks. Okay, he had 0 sacks. So I mean, when you constitute a player like Garrett versus a guy like Hutch. Hutch is coming off a major injury. I never expected the kid to come in here and absolutely be the most elite pass rusher I've ever seen in my entire life because to be honest, that's just false. I mean, it's just asking way too much. It really is. So to all those people that are asking about Hutch and where was he, he's obviously coming alive the last couple games. And I knew that was going to happen as we got closer to week 5, week 6, week 7. That's why Coach Campbell said what he said in week 1. He said, you're going to know about this team week 5, week 6, week 7, week 8 by the bye week. And that's exactly what we're seeing from the Detroit Lions. We're seeing from Hutch. We're seeing from the offensive line what they're able to do. It's not just about what they're doing week 1, week 2, week 3. Like that's all smoke and mirrors sometimes. Sometimes these really good teams could look really good and they could look really bad. So that's what it comes down to. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the Detroit Lions can do in the next couple games. But I'm going to play for you a little clip right here about Jared Goff saying we could be so much better because this game wasn't really his best game, and I'm going to play it for you right now.
After the game, like good, we're gonna be happy, but like we can be so much better. And certainly offensively, the defense played outstanding, right? That is a good defense, and they do present a lot of problems. And you take Khalif's punt return away, we scored 27 points. I mean, and then that's not, it's not like I'm saying that's good enough because today there was a lot of little things that it could have been better, but it's still a winning performance and enough to get the W. And I'm proud of our guys for fighting through some of the little adversity early on.
So you hear Jared Goff there, okay? And he was basically saying they could be a lot better, and they can be a lot better because when you take away, like you said, when you take away the Khalif Raymond punt return, it was 27 points that they scored. And that's not something that they're going to hang their hat on. But when you look at the scoring plays and the scoring drives, 5 plays, 65 yards, 216. That was a Jahmyr Gibbs 8-yard rush TD. They had a field goal, which was a 48-yard field goal in the second quarter. 5 plays, 16 yards. They only got 5 plays, 16 yards, so they got pretty good field positioning. Then a touchdown late in the second quarter. That was 3 plays, 5 yards, minute 26. They had 6 plays, 44 yards, and 47 seconds. That was to get down the field for the Jake Bates 58-yard field goal. But their longest drive of the day was 6 plays, and that came before the half, and that came late in the fourth quarter with the Amon-Ra St. Brown 8-yard pass for Jared Goff. 6 plays, 20 yards, 2 minutes and 58 seconds. Obviously, the Detroit Lions offense did not play well, especially the way that they played in Baltimore. I'm not going to sit here and think it's a bad thing. Like the defense they were going against is one of the best defenses in the NFL. I highlighted it, and here were some key advantages that the Detroit Lions had on the Browns. Now you look at it, like they're pretty close in overall passing efficiency for the defense. But you look at the Lions offense versus the defense of the Browns, it was passing efficiency. The Browns were 21st, the Lions were first. Overall rushing efficiency, the Browns were second, the Lions were 8th, and then pressure rate was pretty close too. So again, coming into the game, I gave you the synopsis that, like, look, I thought this game would be a lot closer. I did not think the Detroit Lions would just blow them out. I did not think they would win 34-10. I literally told you, I was like, I'm not a betting person, but that 9-point spread, 10-point spread is a little thick because I thought of a lot about the defense. Now I said the only way you're getting that 10-point spread is if you get some turnovers, which you did. You got 3 on the day, 1 fumble, 2 interceptions, but you gave up an interception with Goff, and it seemed like Goff and J-Mo were off kilter the whole game. I don't know what it was, but like there was plays where Goff threw the ball downfield, and for whatever reason, J-Mo couldn't really reel it in, or it was a pass to the opposite side of his shoulder where he was trying to catch it, or it was just a straight up drop. And those things happen, and I'm not going to sit here and cry about it because I think a lot of people are going to cry about it, but you can't get mad at some of those things. Those are going to happen during the course of a year. But when you play the Browns, a good defense like the Browns, putting 34 points up on the Browns is no easy stretch. And like I said, their drives were a little bit strenuous. They didn't have many passing, they didn't have many big plays. Their yards per play was 4.9. That's a large cry from the 5.8 they had in the first 3 games. But yards per rush, I mean, they did 3.8, which is pretty good against this team. And the one thing I will say about this game was the Detroit Lions did what they were supposed to do, because when they were in the red zone against the Browns, they were 3 for 3, and that's what really matters. Because when you're in the red zone, you got to take advantage of being in the red zone, and the Detroit Lions did that. So overall, this was a decent game. It could have been a lot different if the Lions did not beat them as much as they could. But it was interesting. But it's just this game. It really showed where the Detroit Lions can go, in my opinion, because we're going into the 5th week of the NFL season. You go play Cincinnati next week. No Joe Burrow, a very defunct offensive line, which is one of the worst in football. And your defensive line is going to be able to get after them. You might have to score some points to keep up with them. But with no Joe Burrow, I like where you're at. So I'm not worried. Week 1, I told people after they lost the Packers, like, look, 1 week, you're not really going to get much out of it. Week 2, week 3, week 4, you're going to learn a lot about this team in a multitude of ways. I know the Bears aren't nothing good. I know the Ravens got absolutely smoked by the Chiefs, but the way you beat the Ravens, I mean, that's not going to be something that they take lightly, and that you just went there and you dominated them. Same for the Browns. I put up this stat again because this is the most important stat of the day. Jahmyr Gibbs had more rushing yards on Sunday than the Bengals, Packers, and Ravens as a team had combined. So when you think about it like that, no team had as many rushing yards as Jahmyr Gibbs, and it was one of his so-so games, I would say. There's a lot left to be. I think there's a lot left for Jahmyr Gibbs to do, but when you talk about what happened in this game, going against a defense like that is very, very interesting. So we'll take questions now. There's some comments. 313 Villain Squad says that's a great win for the Lions. Hell yeah, it's a great win for the Lions. Bears beat the Raiders by a blocked field goal. I've seen that, and I can't believe that's actually like a thing, because that is, God, we've had so many games this year where a blocked field goal has really been crucial. So you go back, like I'll make this for the Lions. Okay, go back and watch Dave Phipp, the special teams coordinator, talk about special teams. When you talk about special teams, how important they are. When you watch the Bears block a field goal to win a game, the Raiders fumbled that game away, right? You look at the Eagles blocking that field goal to win the game. What about the what was it? There's more teams. I'm forgetting who was. Oh, Browns. Same thing. Special teams is such a big part of the game. You got to be good in all 3 facets. And today, Detroit was good in two facets, in defense and special teams, and they won 34-10. That should tell you what it goes down to. Dwayne Keene says Aiden Hutchinson 97. Brand new on YouTube says, yeah, they won a football game. Absolutely. Damien says Raiders sold Bearsha taking another L. I wasn't watching that game. I was watching the Ravens and the Chiefs, and that was a brutal game to watch because the Chiefs were absolutely just demolishing them. But you expect that with the way that the Chiefs their backs were against the wall at home. They could not lose that game. And the Ravens, I mean, they can't lose that game either. But the competition in the AFC West is unbelievable. The Broncos and Chargers, so the Chiefs could not take that loss, especially with the Lions coming in town. Guys need to rest this week. Guys were gonna be up this week. Reed is a high hit for our defense too. What I will say about Reed, okay, yes, he is a high hit for this defense, but when you look at it like this, the next week you're gonna play Cincinnati. Losing him going against T. Higgins and Jamar Chase sucks. But when you think about the quarterback, Jake Browning, I mean, it might be a little bit of a week for him to miss. If he just misses one game, okay. If he misses 2 games against Mahomes, all right, we're talking about a little bit of an issue. 3 games with Baker Mayfield coming in on Monday Night Football, that could be subjective. So whenever Reed does come back, hopefully he comes back sooner than people are thinking. But the way I look at it, man, is the Lions are still a very good football team. We all know that. But I love their cornerback room with Rocky Sin, with Avonte Maddox. He takes some snaps at safety. Khalil Dorsey, I think it has underrated cornerback skills. We're gonna see what they're made of. Obviously, you're gonna take injuries throughout the season. What happened last year and you still got home field advantage is unbelievable. But that shows you that the Detroit Lions coaching staff, they don't cry about injuries. That's not a thing in that locker room. So they're going to take their best foot forward. They're going to take the next person that's going to start. And if DJ Reed can't go in 1 week, fine. Someone will take his spot and they'll perform well too. That's the way this culture is set, man. That is how Dan Campbell wants this culture to be. Okay, we miss one player. Woo, big deal. Let's bring this guy in. Let's give him some help, and we're gonna be fine right there. So that's good that they're doing that. So Lions got a really good got a really good chance to be a very special team. But I want to play this for you. This is on Jared Goff on the offensive line protection.
He's a Hall of Fame player, and we got 2 really good tackles though. We rely on them, and I thought Deck and Panay, he lined up on the left side a lot more, so Deck had to deal with him a lot more. But they were both incredible. They both played really well. That dude's a handful, and we had a plan for him. But for a lot of the time, they were on their own with him, and I thought they handled it well. And that rest of the D line's really good too, and I thought they did well. I thought our interior protected really well. Again, 0 sacks, right? We didn't have any. Yeah, really good.
So again, like I said, you come into this game, you allow 0 sacks, only a couple QB hits. I think if I go back correctly, there was only a couple QB hits. The Detroit Lions had 9 as a defense. The Browns had 5 QB hits. 2 were from Garrett, 1 was from Shelby Harris, 1 was from Malik Collins, and 1 was from Mason Graham. Okay, so you basically held their best defense under reps. So everyone that goes back to that freaking Packer game and they think about what the Packers did on the Detroit Lions defense to the offensive line, think about where the Detroit Lions offensive line has grown from there and where they're going to be when the Green Bay Packers come into town on Thanksgiving. Unless there's an injury, because we can't forecast that. But the way this team is playing and their offensive line, week after week after week after week gets better, you have to be excited about where this thing is going, because eventually the Lions are just gonna, they're gonna catch their stride and Today was not a good offensive performance from the Detroit Lions, but they still scored 34 points on one of the best defenses in the NFL. When we came into the week, okay, this was one of the statistics that I had out, and it was interesting because we talked about on the show that when you talk about the Cleveland Browns defense, they're so good. Okay, the Cleveland Browns defense is so good, and I thought it was very, very interesting because when you looked at team statistics, yards per play, they were the top team. EPA, like that's a statistic for defense. But you're looking at it and you're going, wow, this team is really taking it on. And I look at some of the statistics they allowed the lowest yards per game in the NFL. They allowed the second least yards per play. Okay. They allowed the lowest rushing yards per game, and now with what happened today, they're up to 57.3, which they were at like 47 or whatever. But that's what you see, and then look like quarterback pressures. Like the Cleveland Browns were, in the middle of the league in terms of their quarterback pressures. So I just love what the Detroit Lions were able to do today in terms of not playing their best game by any stretch of the imagination, but they still come back to win the football game. I mean, still come back and win that football game, regarding even all the missed passes, the interception, all that. Like they still came back after all that and still blew them out. And it was a credit to the defense, like Coach Campbell said, but it's a credit to the offense because they knew they weren't playing well, but the offensive line gave him a shot. Jared Goff wasn't his usual self. He still found St. Brown. And St. Brown today, I mean, you can't say nothing about St. Brown. 70 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns, 7 targets, 7 receptions for 70 yards. It's 10 per reception. Jameson Williams had 8 targets today. He only had 2 receptions, 40 yards. You would have loved to see what Jameson could have done if some of those passes would have connected, whether it was Jameson, whether it was Jared Goff. That's something that they got to work on, and that's something that I think they will work on going into Cincinnati, going into Kansas City, going to play Tampa Bay. This was probably the best thing for the Detroit Lions offensive performance, because usually when they have a so-so game, they come back and they have a couple good weeks, and that's what you need from this Detroit Lions team. Because when you look around the NFL right now, and I'll give you some of the scores that happened today, because this is a Detroit Lions football podcast. The Texans won today. They won 26-0. They're 1-3 on the season. Tonight, the Packers and the Cowboys will play tonight. I think that's the best game of the season. I can't wait. I think the Green Bay Packers are definitely going to win, but I love the storyline of that whole game. The Vikings lost today, 24-21 to the Steelers. They're 2-2. The Commanders lost to the Falcons today. They're 2-2. So are the Falcons. 34-27 winners over the Commanders. The Bills beat the Saints 31-19. The Saints are 0-4. And let me just tell you something. I wish we had the Saints on the schedule, because they would be a tune-up game for this team. And so far, the Saints are brutal. They're a brutal football team. The Carolina Panthers lost 42-13 to the New England Patriots, who are 2-2 on the season. They improved to 2-2. The Giants beat the Chargers for their first loss, 21-18. The major news coming out of that game today, if you have him in fantasy, which I do, Malik Neighbors is going to miss time. He might have a torn ACL. So if you are looking forward to the future with the Detroit Lions, they might not have to have to deal with Malik Neighbors as their wide receiver, because he might be out for the season. The Colts lost to the Rams. They're 27-20. The Rams are 3-1. So the Colts lost their first game. Wow. The Buccaneers lose the Eagles. They were getting absolutely throttled, and they still came back in 25-31 final there. Jaguars beat the 49ers 26-21. The Jaguars are 3-1 on the season. The 49ers are 3-1 on the season. And that's interesting. As you heard about that, the Ravens lost to the against the Chiefs, 37-20. Patrick Mahomes 4 touchdowns, 270 yards. And as we were told on the podcast, the Bears beat the Raiders on a blocked field goal. Caleb Williams, 22 for 37, 212 yards, 1 touchdown. Ashton Genty, the running back for the Raiders, had 21 carries, 138 yards, and 1 touchdown. And Rome Odunze keeps his touchdown streak alive. Tomorrow on Monday Night Football, you'll see some absolute garbage football. I mean, I think I'm excited to see what the Bengals can do against the Broncos. But the Jets and Dolphins is an absolute train wreck. Hopefully, Aaron Glenn can get his first win. I just can't wait for Aaron Glenn to get his first win. He really deserves it. So hopefully he does. But if you want to watch the Bengals tomorrow play the Broncos, the Lions do play the Bengals next week in Cincinnati. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens there. As you look at the standings right now, the Detroit Lions are in first place so far, but if Green Bay wins tonight, they will take over first place via the tiebreaker. The Bears and the Vikings are at 2-2, and obviously, if you look at the conference, in terms of the conference, the Detroit Lions are 3-1. Only the Eagles are undefeated. There's a couple 3-1 teams: the Rams, the Seahawks, the Buccaneers, the 49ers. You will play a lot of these teams. The Eagles, you will play. The Bucs, you will play. Seahawks, you don't play. The Rams, Packers, you will play. So you'll have a chance to beat them off. So it'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward. But like I said, very impressed by the way the Detroit Lions won today. The way that they played in the face of adversity, not having their best game, still coming to play, still making the plays, even though they weren't their best chance. It's going to be up. So no one's worried about nothing. So again, this was a great win for the Lions. I came into this game today. And I thought, man, there was so much that could have went wrong if you didn't play well. The Browns defense is really good. The Lions offense not play good. It was like a C- performance, and I still put up 34 points. So there's nothing to really be upset about with this. Obviously, there's a lot that the Lions can take out of it, and they will. Dan Campbell is going to hammer it home. Jared Goff and James Williams are going to get on the right path in terms of where they're going to go. But all in all, I thought this was a great game for the Detroit Lions. No sacks allowed against a guy like Myles Garrett, Mason Graham, Malik Collins, Shelby Harris. It was a fantastic game for the Detroit Lions. And if you want to be completely honest with each other, the offensive line is not giving him a sack in 3 weeks. So there you go. That's my main point. So it's going to be interesting to see where this Lions team goes in the next couple weeks. Obviously, when you heard Coach Campbell say you learn the most about a team from week 4 to week 5 to week 6, you certainly do. And we're learning a lot about this Lions team and where they're going, because right now where they're going in terms of the way they play, they're going to be a damn good football team moving forward. So we will see what happens there. But for the most part, this was a beautiful game from the Detroit Lions, and they will go into Cincinnati next week, playing the Bengals, and it'll be a very, very interesting game from all standpoints. We'll see you in the next podcast. We'll talk more Detroit Lions football here on the Detroit Lions News podcast. Thank you for watching. And if you missed any portion of this podcast, you can go on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Detroit Lions News podcast is where you need to go. You can always watch on demand at JC Sports. We have some YouTube videos that go out. We have the Red Alert podcast, which is the Red Wings podcast. We're going to have Tiger stuff that comes out over probably tomorrow. So there's a lot that's going to come out, but thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next podcast. We talk more Detroit Lions football here on the Detroit Lions News podcast.